Hi and welcome everyone. In today's lesson I will be teaching you all about conditionals. What are conditionals? So the English conditionals, making conditional sentences is an everyday part of your English language, and introducing them to your English conversation can really improve your level of communication. There are 4 types of conditionals in total, and you will learn to use them gradually. Obviously, starting with the most basic ones, which are the zero and the first conditional. And to have a general idea of how all the conditionals work, I will explain each one, the usage, the formula, and give you some examples, and we will take a quiz on them just to make sure you have mastered them. So, what is a conditional sentence? Well, a conditional sentence is based on the word if. So all conditional sentences must start with if. And there are always 2 parts to a conditional sentence. One part beginning with if, and that is to describe a possible situation, and the second part which describes the consequence. For example, if it rains, we'll get what? So conditional in Arabic هي حالة, and consequence هي نتيجة. So احنا عنا حالة and عنا, we have a conditional and we have a result. عنا حالة and we have نتيجة. And this is basically what conditionals are. If you do something, this will happen. If something happens, that will happen. So عنا حالة وعنا نتيجة. This is basically what the conditionals are all about. We can also invert the 2 parts of the conditional sentences so that the if part comes second, and this is especially common in questions. For example, what will you do if you miss the train? Okay, so there are 4 types of conditionals again. We have the zero conditional, we have the first conditional, we have the second conditional, and we have the third conditional. Now, if you're an 8th grader, just worry about the zero, first, and second. My 9th graders worry about all 4 of them. There is also mixed conditionals, but we're not going to go into that now. So now let's talk about the zero conditional. So we use the zero conditional to talk about permanent truths such as scientific facts and general habits. And the structure is very simple for zero conditional. It's if plus present simple and then plus, that's it. So if plus present simple, and the present simple is, we can consider it 50% possibility. Okay, and let me give you an example. If you eat a lot, you put on weight. So this is, this is a permanent truth, a scientific fact, and it's a habit also we can describe. Let me give you another example. If you heat water at 100, it boils. This is also a permanent truth. It's a scientific fact. And we have the if and the present simple. So zero conditional is very easy. I'm going to go over each one in more detail, but I just want to give you an idea of what they are first. So we said the zero conditional talks about permanent truths, permanent situations such as scientific facts and general truth. We have the first conditional. The first conditional, we use the first conditional to talk about realistic situation in the present or future. And the structure of the first conditional is if plus present simple, and then we can use will, can, must, plus the verb. So, for example, if you're free later, comma, we can go for a walk. So here I have the if, and then I have the present simple, and I have the subject, we, and then I used can, and then the verb, and the continuation of the sentence. So again, the first conditional, we use first conditional to talk about realistic situations in the present or future. And the structure of the first conditional is if plus present simple, comma, will, can, must, plus the verb. We can use either one of them. Another example, if you're hungry, comma, I'll make some sandwiches. So here we have the if, and then we have the present simple. If they're hungry, I'll make some sandwiches. I have the if plus subject plus the present simple, which is if, and then we have they for the subject, and then we have are hungry, which is in the present simple, and then comma, and then I, subject, will, there is will, and the verb, make, and then some sandwiches. So the if, the conditionals are not hard. You just have to know when to use each one. Another way to make the first conditional sentence is to use unless, which means only if or except. As with if, the word unless can never be followed by will, but only the present simple. And let me give you an example. Unless you hurry up, you won't catch the bus. What does this mean? Unless you hurry up, you won't catch the bus. This means if you don't hurry up, so we're using unless instead of if. So if you don't hurry up, you're going to miss the bus. And let's talk about the second conditional now. So we said the zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional. The second conditional, we use the second conditional to talk about improbable or impossible situations in the present or future. What does that mean? Improbable or impossible means very small possibility, okay? Tiny, tiny possibility. And how do we form it? The structure for the second conditional is if plus the past simple, and then comma, and then we use would or could plus the verb. For example, if I had more time, comma, I'd exercise more. But I don't have more time, so I don't. Okay, and this is a true fact. So I have my if, and then if I have my subject, and then I had my past simple, which is had, and then I have my comma in the middle, and then I have my subject, and then I used would, and then plus the verb. So if I had more time, I'd exercise more. And this is second conditional. Again, second conditional talks about improbable or impossible situations in the present or future. And what is the structure for it? If plus past simple, and then comma, would, could, and then plus the verb. Okay, and a common expression used to give advice has the second conditional structure. For example, if I were you, I'd so. So meaning that this is what I would do if I were you. If I were you, I'd take an aspirin. If I were you, I'd, so it's meaning that if I were you, I would do this. Okay, and the third conditional, we use a third conditional to talk about impossible situations. As in the second conditional in the past, we often use the third conditional to describe regrets. And the structure is if plus past perfect, comma, and then would have plus the past participle, or could have plus the past participle. Now the third conditional, the first part of the third conditional is zero possibility. So this is an impossible situation. And the second half of the third conditional is 100% certainty. So let me give you an example. If I had left earlier, we would have arrived on time, but I didn't. So it didn't happen. It was impossible. I didn't leave early and we're late. So that's what third conditional talks about, impossible situations. Okay, now let's look at in more detail. Again, we said that all conditionals are in the future time clauses, and they all talk about hypothetical, real, possible, improbable, impossible, and regretful situations. If I were you, I would take an aspirin. So we have the if, الحالة, and their consequences, النتيجة. So this is basically what 0, 1, 2, 3 conditionals are talking about. If, حالة, ونتيجة. Remember, you can invert the two clauses in all conditionals. You can switch them around. Put the second part of the sentence in the beginning, and the second part. For example, if I were you, I'd stop smoking. Okay, so we have our if, we have our subject, and we have were, and then our comma, and then we have our subject, and then we have would, and then we have our verb. And then we can switch it around, put the second half of the sentence in the beginning, and it would still make sense. I'd stop smoking if I were you. Same meaning. There is no difference, same meaning. This is what's cool about the conditionals. And like I said, we have 4 different types of conditionals: zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional, and third. And like I said, we have our zero conditional. And how do we form it? If plus the present simple and comma and present simple again. And you can also use present continuous or present perfect. Either clauses, either clause would work. Doesn't matter. For example, if you haven't been to London, you haven't lived. Which means, London is nice place to visit. And we can also switch it around and say you haven't lived if you haven't been to London. Okay, so let's remember, zero conditional talks about permanent truth, such as scientific facts, general habits, and permanent truth, scientific habits, and general habits. And the structure we said is if plus the present simple, and then and present simple again. The zero conditional, here's some more examples. Water boils when it reaches 100 Celsius. We're still talking about the zero conditional. So another example, if or when prices go down, sales increase. So we have our if, and then we have our present simple plus present simple. If prices go down, sales increase. Second example, if people have traveled a lot in life, they have lived. This is also, we have our if, we have our present perfect, and present perfect. And our third example, if or when people have been working all day, we don't get good results. So here we have if plus present perfect continuous plus the present simple. So example, and it gives you which conditional underneath it. So again, our zero conditional is used to talk about things that are generally true as a result of something which always happens. Again, zero conditional talks about scientific facts. Zero conditional talks about general cause and effect. And in this kind of conditional, we use the present tense. We can use the present simple, present continuous, present perfect in both clauses. The first conditional. Okay, we said that the first conditional talks about realistic situations in the present or future. Okay, so how do we, what is the structure for the first conditional? We have if plus any present tense, which we have present simple, present continuous, or present perfect. We can use any of these. And that is what's so cool about them, as long as your sentences make sense. Okay? So again, our first conditional, we use the first conditional to talk about realistic situations in the present or future, and that is why we can use any of the present tense. We can use the present simple, present continuous, or the present perfect. And let's talk about our second conditional. Like I said, we use the second conditional to talk about improbable or impossible situations in the present or future. And how do we, what is the structure to it? We have if plus the past simple, okay? And then we could use would or could. We could use will, won't. We can use the future perfect, the future continuous. So here, let me give you some more examples to have a better idea. So we have more examples on the first conditional. If you don't do more work, you'll fail your exam. This is first conditional, remember. Now we said the first conditional talks about realistic situations. And this is real. If you don't do more work, you'll fail your exam. If you don't study, you will fail. This is a real fact. She won't get into university unless she gets good grades. This is also a realistic situation, a real situation. And like I said, we can, unless means if not. So if we use if not, that means unless. Another one, if I haven't come back by 1 o'clock, start without me. Okay, so again, the first conditional, if plus the present simple, if I haven't come back by 1 o'clock, start without me. If you're not going, I'm not going to go. If you send the file by 5 p.m. today, I'll have the report finished with my additions by 1 p.m. tomorrow. So again, the first conditional, we talk about realistic situations in the present or future. So these are all realistic situations that happen every day. And the future time clauses. So when we are talking about the future, we use the present tense after these expressions. And we can use any present tense. We can use the present simple, the present continuous, or the present perfect, and we can use as soon as, or when, until, unless, before, after, and in case. So again, the future time clauses, when we are talking about the future, we use the present tense after these expressions. So as soon as, and then the present tense, or when, and then the present tense. So until, and then the present tense. Before, after, then the present tense. In case of, present tense. Remember, so you can use any of these, and we're familiar with all of these conjunctions. And the future time clauses, here are some examples. I'll be ready as soon as I've finished this survey. I'll be ready as soon as I've fished. This survey is supposed to be finished. I'm sorry, there's some letters missing. Another example, we'll probably be interviewing more candidates when you arrive. Or, we are not going to start until you have arrived, or until you arrive. Or, I'm not going to work overtime unless I get paid. Or, take an umbrella in case it rains. So you see that we used here the future time clauses, as soon as, when, until, unless. And after them, we have the present tense. As soon as I've finished, or when you arrive, or until you have arrived, or unless I get paid. So this is all in the present. Or in case it rains. This is all in the present tense, or present continuous. Okay, let's repeat this part again. I'll be ready as soon as I've finished the survey. We'll probably be interviewing more candidates when you arrive. We are not going to start until you have arrived. I'm not going to work overtime unless I get paid. And take an umbrella in case it rains. Now, let's talk about in case and if. What does that mean? We use in case when we do something in order to be ready for future situations or problems. For example, I'll accept the job offer if it's well paid. Okay, so in other words, or in other meaning, I will only take the job if they pay well, if they pay me good. And that equals to I won't accept the job offer if it's not paid well. Do you see how this means that we have حالة and we have a نتيجة? So we have a conditional, and we have situation, and we have the result, and we have the consequence. So that is basically what conditionals talk about. They talk about حالة, نتيجة, and التابعة للنتيجة, which is a consequence. And the types of conditionals in Arabic, they mean أنواع الشروطية, and I'm sure you are familiar with that. So I'll accept the job in case I don't get another offer. This means يعني رح أقبل بالشغل إذا حدا تاني ما رح يحكي معي, which means I will accept anyway because there might not be another offer. Same meaning, يعني ممكن إنه أقبل بالشغل عشان maybe إنه ما رح يكون في فرصة تانية للشغل زي هذا. So we have our conditional and we have our result. The second conditional, as we said, we use the second conditional to talk about improbable or impossible situations in the present or future. Okay? So how do we form it? We have if plus the past simple, and then, or we can use past continuous, and then we can, and then comma, and then we have our subject, and then we can either use would or wouldn't, or might or could, and these are all without to. We do not use to in this sentence. And then, of course, plus our verb. So second conditional, we can use if plus the past simple, or if plus the past continuous, with either one of these, would, might, could, and then our verb. Or wouldn't, might not, or couldn't, okay, for negative sentences, plus our verb. But remember, do not put to. That's a complete wrong sentence. So let's look at here. When do you use the second conditional? Like I said, we use second conditional to talk about imaginary or improbable situations, the present or the future, and their consequences. For example, if I were you, I'd get the earlier flight. So إذا أنا كنت أنتي أنا بطلع بالطيارة الأبكر. Note, when you give advice, with the verb be, you use were for I, he, and she, and it in the if clause, okay? So if I, if he, if she, and if you can say, if I were here, I'd know what to do, okay? So remember, when you want to give advice with the verb be, you use if, you use were for I. So I were, he were, she were, if she were you, if he were you, if I were you, and it in the if clause. And for example, if he or if I were here, I'd know what to do. That means لو أنا كنت هون بالوقت كان عرفت شو كان عملت. Now let's compare the first conditional to the second conditional. For example, if I have time, I will help you. If I have time, I'll help you. Which equals to, this is a possible situation, and I may have time. I may, 50%. If I have time, I'll help you. Okay? Second example, if I had time, I'd help you. Okay? If I had time, I'd help you. And this is an imaginary situation, which I won't have time. We can use don't or won't. I don't have time. I'm sorry, I don't have time. Or I won't have time to help you. And remember, I would, we contract it to I'd, I apostrophe D. Okay, so this is the comparison between first and second conditional. The first conditional talking about possible situations. If I have time, I'll help you. And second conditional, if I had time, I'd help you, which means I don't have time, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And third conditional, like I said, we have the past perfect simple, or we can use the past perfect continuous after if, and then our comma, and then subject, and then we can either use would, might, could, and then we can use not if it's a negative sentence, and it would be wouldn't, might not, or couldn't. And then plus have, and then our verb. For example, if you had studied more, you'd have done better in your exams. And this goes to all my students. If you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams. Another example, if you had worked harder, you wouldn't have been dismissed. Another example, if you had been driving more slowly, you wouldn't have got stopped by the police. So that means you were driving too fast and the police stopped you to see what was going on. So the first one talks about a past situation and its consequence. Yani, if you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams. This is in the past. لو عملتي هيك كان صار هيك. حالة and نتيجة. And second one talks about, expresses the wish to change the past action. If you had worked harder, you would not have been dismissed. So this is like a wish. If you would have worked harder, you wouldn't have been dismissed. Dismissed means, left. And the last one, often used to express regret. If you had been driving more slowly, you wouldn't have got stopped by the police. This is a regret. Like, regret, ندم. لو ما كنتي مسرعة كان ما وقفك البوليس. That's exactly what it means. Now let's compare the second conditional to the third. Example, second conditional. If you studied more, you would do better in your exams. Second conditional. Third conditional. If you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams. Do you see the difference? If you studied more, you would do better in your exams. If you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams. So the second conditional, like I said, talks about impossible situations, but you didn't do better, so you didn't do good in your exam. And third conditional talks about impossible situations. If we had left, if you had studied, this is impossible situation in the past, okay? If you had studied more, this is in the past. Studied, you already studied and finished, you would have done better in your exams. So this is an impossible situation in the past. And like I said, regret. I'm sorry, I'm not knowing how to talk properly now. So again, second conditional. We use the second conditional to talk about impossible situation in the present or future. If you studied more, you would do better in your exams. So this is present or future. If you studied more, you would do better in your exams. Okay, so I can be telling you this. If you studied more, you would do better in your exams. Like I'm telling you guys this now. But third conditional, like I said, third conditional talks about impossible situations in the past. It's done and over with. If you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams. So after the first exam, I told you, if you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams. So this is a situation in the past. It's impossible now because it's done, it was in the past, and it's over with. Okay, I hope you got a better understanding of this. More examples. If you studied more, you would do better in your exams, which equals to you don't study enough, but if you did, things would be different. So when I say, if you studied more, you would do better in your exams, what do I mean when I say that to you? I mean, you, young lady, or you, young man, don't study enough, but if you did, things would be different. Your grades would be a lot better. You would have a better chance into getting into a better university and studying something better. So here is our حالة and نتيجة, which is the basic concept of our conditional 0, 1, 2, 3. Another example. if you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams. Okay, what do I mean by this? Like we said, this is our third conditional because it's impossible and it's in the past. When I say if you had studied more, you would have done better in your exams, I mean you, young lady or young man, didn't study enough, so you failed. You imagine how things could have been different in the past. So this is conditional and result, حالة and نتيجة. Okay, very easy, not complicated. I know there's many of them, 0, 1, 2, 3, but they're easy if you know when to use each one. Like I said, my 8th graders only focus on 0, 1, and 2. 9th and 10th, please focus on all of it, the whole video. Now, let's see which conditional each one of these sentences are. Now, I want you to get a pen and a paper and write these sentences down and write what type of conditional they are. I will read them to you and then I will give you the answers. Wishing to change the past. What did we say? Which conditional is that? Wishing to change the past. Is it 0? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it third conditional? Which one is it? Try to remember. Next, we have a real possibility. A real possibility. That's the first thing I talked about. Which conditional did I talk about? The first. I just gave you a clue. Next, we have to talk about an imaginary improbable situation in the present or future. In the present or future. Remember, I said we use this conditional to talk about improbable or impossible situations in the present or future. Do you remember? It is the second conditional. Okay. General cause and effect. General cause and effect. What is that? A specific cause and effect. A remote unlikely possibility. Or scientific facts or general truth. Or to give advice. Cause and effect in the past. And you imagine a past action with a result in the future. Think about these. Try to answer these questions in here. Wishing to change the past. Remember when I said, if you had studied more, you would have passed, but you didn't, so you failed. So that's third conditional. We said a real possibility is in the first conditional. And we said conditions that are imaginary and probable situations in the present or future, second conditional. General cause and effect, that's 0 conditional. A specific cause and effect, first conditional. Unlikely possibility can go to the second conditional. Scientific facts and general truth, we know that 0 conditional. To give advice, if I were you, I'd stop smoking, second conditional. Cause and effect in the past, remember, if you had studied more, you would have passed your exam, third conditional. And I'm not going to talk into mixed conditionals, that's later on. Okay, so these are the answers. Take a good look at them, make sure. This is telling you when to use each one. Okay, so if you memorize this, you are set to go. Here, I have some exercises for you to complete. Complete the exercises with the appropriate conditional form. I will read them to you and then give you the answers. Try to solve it while I'm reading. It'll be quicker if we blank a taxi to the airport. If the company stopped advertising online, higher operating cost. 3, I think he'd be happier if he blank alone. 4. The managing director wouldn't have fired so many of his employees if they blank relocate earlier. Relocate means moved their company somewhere else. 5. We don't start if all the students blank talk. 6. I'll, which means I will be very surprised if Maria blank not get the job that was advertised here last week. 7. If you cross an international date line, the time change. 8. If the entrepreneur hadn't taken so many risks, the company blank not closed down. 9. All the goods would have sold out if we blank dropped the prices a little. 10. If I blank pass all my exams, I would be working by now. 11. If I blank to be you, I'd leave it till tomorrow. Remember what I said? If I were you, I'd leave it till tomorrow. Write these down. Write the correct answer. Write the correct conditional form. And let's see the answers. It'll be quicker if we get a taxi to the airport. If the company stopped advertising online, it would have higher operating costs. I think he'd be happier if he did not live alone. The managing director wouldn't have fired so many of his employees if they relocated earlier. لو رحلوا أبكر. We don't start if all the students are talking. And that is true. I won't start my lesson if everyone's talking. 6. I will be very surprised if Maria doesn't get the job that was advertised here last week. If you cross an international date line, the time changes. True fact. If the entrepreneur hadn't taken so many risks, the company wouldn't have closed down. 9. All the goods would have sold out if we had dropped the prices. If I had passed all my exams, I would be working by now. If I were you, I'd leave it till tomorrow. Okay. And that comes to the end of our lesson. I hope you got a better understanding. Please go over it once, twice, 3 times, as many times as you need to understand it better. And I will do some exercises. We will work more on the conditionals to have a better feeling and to master it more better. I hope I was able to relate it to you, to explain it to you in the most simplest way. And I want to wish everyone a great rest of your day or night, whatever time it is for you now. And until our next time, have a great day.